This video, I'm going to give you a couple controversial techniques for filling up your property for the most amount of money if you have a house on Airbnb or Vrbo or anywhere else. So this video, let me give you some of my favorite topic to teach, short-term rental pricing strategy. Let's go. Welcome back, YouTube world. Yes, I have houses on Airbnb too. I still don't own them. Well, you guys know me, but I have houses on Airbnb and I have for years. I also have plenty of students coast to coast and everywhere in between, even internationally, who we have to discuss pricing strategy every week because every market is different, every property is different, what they offer is different, and so we get really granular with pricing strategy when I'm working with my students. And I found some stuff that is so consistent that you can use it almost anywhere and you will absolutely get results. And I want to teach you pricing strategy for houses in a way that will bring home the bacon for you and increase your revenues. So first, pricing strategy, what do we mean? Well, prices are not fixed. With almost any product in the world, even Elon Musk at Tesla, for example, the prices for their cars are changing by the week, it seems, right? Prices may change based on supply, demand, cost of production, etc. In our world, though, we've got a uniquely fragile product. See, if Tesla doesn't sell a car this week, that car still exists, and they can sell it next week. Maybe they drop the price, they'll get it later. That car is valid as long as it exists. But if you're trying to sell this upcoming Tuesday, and Tuesday passes, you no longer have that inventory for sale. It is one of the primary market forces that we have to follow in order to get our place full. So we will lower prices and we will raise prices, but we have to do this with this understanding that if we don't get a day booked, it's gone. And we can't go back and decide the perfect price for it later and then try to sell it because the day has passed. So we need to proactively find the right price for every single day on our calendar, and that's pricing strategy, so that way we can get 100% of our days booked if at all possible. Now, it is possible to get near 100% occupancy almost any month, but at what cost, you might ask? Reasons why we might raise our prices would be special events or high seasonal markets. So there might be a music festival, there could be the rodeo in Houston, for example, could be a baseball game, basketball game, could be the playoffs. There could be all sorts of reasons why demand will be higher than normal. And the reason why we raise our prices is because if all of the property in a city is going to get booked, eventually, then they're going to have to pay the price that you want because there's going to be no inventory left. High demand will consume all of this supply. So you can raise your prices to something a little bit more, greedy, and they'll get stuck paying it. I remember my first year that I experienced this was during the Super Bowl in Houston, 2017, and I had these little studio apartments that went for $1,000 a night. The very dingy Motel 6s, the Red Roof Inns, the La Quintas, they were booked at $400 to $600 a night also. Places where the properties were normally $60 a day were 10xing what they were charging because demand was so high, people absolutely wanted a place to stay. They would pay anything just to be in Houston at the time. That's a high demand kind of thing. And yes, you can raise your prices in situations like this. I think this is especially pronounced for houses because you get this multiplier effect when you're able to sleep more people. See, a studio that sleeps 4 or 5 people, maybe 2 or 3 people come together and split that cost. If you have a property that can sleep 14 or 16 people and you guys are hosting the Super Bowl, well, a bunch of people might come together and all split the cost for that house and try to make it one big memorable event. But that cost per head is actually still going to be in line or even lower than the cost for the studio, which means that if 10 people split the cost for the house, you can make $3,000 to $5,000 a night sometimes, and that's really wonderful. But then we will also lower prices due to guidances within pricing strategy, or revenue management is another way we can call this. You might have to lower your prices because you're running out of time to get booked. In a period of high demand where you're running out of time to get booked and everyone else is booked and you're one of the only properties left, you may not have to lower your price. But in times where you don't have that unnaturally high demand, and it's you and a bunch of other people that are left unbooked, you will have to lower your prices below your competition to become more attractive than your competition last minute in order to get booked. Your alternate strategy to this is to make a better property. You could add a hot tub, you could redesign your whole place, you could take new photos, relist your listing, but this takes time. And so if you don't have your property booked tomorrow or the next day or the day after, you don't have time to install a hot tub and take new photos, do you? No. So you have to lower your price if you want to become more attractive than your competitors, static as listings are today. This makes room for the argument that some people may not have to lower their prices because their product is so good that they'll always get booked. Now, I will say if that you always get booked, then your prices are too low because you should always have some element of dynamic pricing in any price model. Even if you're the best property in town, there will be days that you can charge more and there'll be days that you charge less. You'll make the most money if you're priced perfectly every day. If you have a flat pricing strategy that is getting you 90+% occupied, your prices are too low. You could proactively change your prices for slow season too. It doesn't just have to be when you're running out of time. but you'll know that, say, maybe in December or January, there are only 30, 40, or 50% of properties that do get booked, and you can find this out for free on AirDNA. Sign up for free airdna.co account and just type in your market, and you'll see in the middle, there's gonna be 3 charts, and the middle chart will show you occupancy percentage. Well, that occupancy percentage is the number of hosts, the percentage of hosts that are successfully getting booked. So if you find that your low season is 30 to 55% occupancy, that means only 30 to 55% of hosts are getting bookings, which means if you wanna be one of those 30 to 55% of hosts, you need to find a way to be one by either making the best property possible or pricing yourself right. I recommend for both small and large properties to proactively restructure your prices for slow season to try to get a monthly booking going into slow season. So like the month before slow season, make your prices attractive for a multi-month booking. Because if you get a multi-month booking going into slow season, you no longer have to worry about whether or not your price is right. You just got yourself covered. This is a great preventative strategy. But also there's a rule of thumb here. In high markets, you want to be one of the last properties booked. In low markets, you want to be one of the first properties booked. Just remember that. Take that to the bank. So this is stuff that applies to all listings. And if you want more pricing strategy stuff for all listings, I've got a playlist on this YouTube channel called Pricing Strategy. Watch those videos, and there's plenty to learn there. Where does this deviate for larger properties? And like I said, a lot of this will be controversial, but I've been teaching this for 8 years. This is based on data. This is based on reality, not based on weird principles that we like to argue about on Facebook. And you probably have heard those arguments. I might even give them some room in this video. So first off is, if you have a house, your highest price and your lowest price will be a percentage difference greater than if you were a studio. Now, here's what I mean. With a studio apartment where your average price might be $150 to $175 a night on the weekends, maybe $110 a night on the weekdays, you might only need to drop your prices 30% to get booked all the time from your regular prices. So your downward movement is going to be lower. You still have a good opportunity at upward movement when there's a lot of demand, like the Super Bowl. You can 5x to 10x your prices. Way cool. But same for houses. But with houses on the low end, if your prices are normally $350 a night on the weekdays, $700 a night on the weekends, something like that, well, you could possibly have to lower your prices to $100 a day on the weekdays, maybe even $250 a night on the weekends if you miss your mark and don't get bookings. Your price drop as a house, instead of 30%, could be as much as 70% to get a last minute booking. And we don't want that. We want to avoid that, which means if you want to prevent having to drop your prices by more than 50%, you will need to start changing your prices farther into the future than with apartments. This is another way that houses are different than apartments in pricing strategy. With apartments, we might hold that $110 weekday price and the $170 weekend price until maybe 10 or 14 days into the future. If we're not getting booked 10 or 14 days in the future, then we'll start to shave our prices below $100 on weekdays and below 170 on the weekends. And maybe 3 or 4 days into the future, we're finally like really cutting prices where we might see a weekday price, you know, as low as say $70 or something like that. This is where it changes for houses. That $350 per night on the weekday, $700 on the weekends, we should be changing that 35 to 45 days in advance if we're not hitting the mark. The reason why, larger groups book further in advance. If your home can sleep 14 people and you don't have a booking 6 weeks from now, what is the likelihood that a group of 14 is going to decide to take a trip to you and book your place within 6 weeks? It's kind of low. There are still people who will book your place. May not be a group of 14. Maybe it's a group of 8, group of 9, group of 7. So what you do is you reprice your listing that could sleep 14 people to be attractive to a group of 8 to 10 instead for 6 weeks out. Like I said, that group of 14 probably booked 3-4 months in advance. A group of 7 or 8 might book 4 to 6 weeks in advance. A group of 5 or 6 might book 3 or 4 weeks in advance, and you could still get a booking for like a couple or a small family that would book maybe just 2 or 3 weeks in advance possibly. And so your tiered system for pricing will go from ultra premium rates, then 45 days to 35 days out, go to a competitive price for a group of 10 or something like that, and you slowly taper down until about a week into the future. The reason why is it's not that your property's not worth that much, but what your property is worth will change to different groups of people who travel. And as a house, you have way more swings of the bat to catch a group of people. That far future 14, then like medium future group of 10, groups of 6, groups of 4. But what someone will pay for your house will depend on who they are, what group size they are. This is one of the biggest tips you could ever adhere to when doing your pricing for your own house, is let your prices swing wider and let them swing sooner if you want to get those weekdays booked. A lot of you are probably worried about the fact that if somebody books at too low of a price, they might be trying to throw a party. There's multiple red flags for what could become a party, not just low price, but if somebody's a local one they booked, if they booked super last minute, if they don't have any reviews, if their phone number is a Google Voice number that can't be reached, all sorts of things, right? These combinations of red flags are things you should be careful for, but we're preventing some of these red flags by dropping our price fast enough, soon enough. Right? If we drop our rates from $350 on weekdays to $150 on weekdays, 10 days or 14 days in the future, and that gets a booking, sure, it was a low price, but whoever booked it's 10 or 14 days in the future. It gives you a lot of time to assess whether or not this person's a risk. And typically that profile of customer that books 2 weeks in advance is also not throwing a party. So you're actually killing some of the more important red flags, which is last minute bookings. Because of this, we don't keep our price low 5 or 7 days into the future. That's where the bottom is. We will drop our prices to as low as they can be 7 to 10 days into the future. But then as today arrives, as it becomes more and more last minute, we're actually going to raise our prices again for 2 reasons. 1, to prevent parties, and 2, in your area, there may not be a lot of houses, might not be a lot of big ones, and hosts are known for canceling on guests. It just happens. If you have a home that's available today and another guest has to find a new house because their host canceled, Airbnb might call you and say, hey, we need a home for this person. Is yours available? And since yours is, you want to make sure you get paid a premium for that last minute scramble of a relocation. Houses last minute, today, tomorrow, should come back up to their original prices, just in case it's a relocation thing. And then all the days in the future, 4, 5, 6, 7 days out, as a total game theory adjustment, those should be your lowest prices. Now, there will be some questions like, what price is too low that it's a risk of people throwing parties? Or how soon should I drop my rate 50%? If ever, right? How proactive would 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks be? Is it good enough? Now, these answers actually depend on your market. See, if your market is more international travel, where people are coming from out of the country, those people book further in advance. So you will know further in advance if your property is doing well on bookings, which means you drop your prices further in advance. If you live in a city that tends to have a problem with parties like Philadelphia did post-COVID, dropping your prices in Philadelphia is far worse of an idea than dropping your prices in Dallas, Texas. There are completely different local demographics, and the locals in Philadelphia did some pretty bad stuff. That's why I'm also not in Philadelphia anymore. It's a pretty rough city. So I would not drop our prices as much in Philly because it wasn't worth the risk. Here in Dallas, we'll cut prices all day to get 100% full. You do have to decide in your local market whether or not you can stomach the risk of that local demographic booking your place. These questions start to bridge market research. You need to know your consumer, you need to know your competitor, you need to know the competitive heat of properties that you exist in for your groups at 12 or 14, and then you also need to know what competitive heat you're going to be in if you drop your rates. Which properties are you competing with if you start to price for 6 or 8 guests, or for 5? Your competition changes when you start to lower your price brackets. Now, I did a couple webinars that will really serve you if you really want to master pricing strategy, market research, and SEO. They are all on my main website, rockygh.com. My webinar that covers SEO placement and ranking and making sure that your listing is seen and booked is called Re-Algorithm. I created this webinar because in November, Airbnb flipped their algorithm upside down, and all of a sudden people were getting no views and no bookings. It was actually kind of terrible because there's key changes that we needed to make for Airbnb's winter release. That's still available. There's another one called Big Data. This is my market research webinar. I just completed it. It was an absolute banger. For 2 hours straight, I gave some of the best modern market research techniques you could ever learn in short-term rentals, and it allows you to do this all for free. You don't need to pay for AirDNA or All the Rooms or anyone else to get the data or to interpret the data that you need to do the right things with your listings. Market research and SEO are both prime, and then I have multiple webinars on pricing strategy, how to do all the stuff that I do with rule sets, how to use multi-day discounts instead of a minimum night stay in order to control consumer behavior so you can still be seen for 1 or 2 nights, but only booked for the 3 or 4 nights. This is actually good for your SEO. It's a really huge part of my pricing strategy still to this day. And also more modern is I have an adjustment for how to do pricing strategy with no cleaning fee. I will say that no cleaning fee works by far better for apartments than it does for houses. I still see a sizable uptick in bookings for my listings that have no cleaning fee, and I'm always constantly split testing this because I am a YouTuber in the space. Houses, we don't get as much upside. But smaller properties and apartments, no cleaning fees seems to be the win. But in summary, my pricing strategy webinars teach both sides, cleaning fee and no cleaning fee. And until the day that you decide to make that investment in that high-level education, the stuff that I only teach in private, you still have access to all the free YouTube videos that I have here, including that pricing strategy playlist. Again, that's going to be in the description. My last controversial technique for you. I don't want to leave you without this. I taught this years ago, but the video just wasn't so popular because I wasn't such a good YouTuber back then. Video quality really does govern video performance here on YouTube. I taught a split strategy. If you have a 4-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house, you've got a massive property. And there comes a point that dropping your prices any lower for the entire space just doesn't serve you anymore. If you can charge $1,000 per night on the weekends and $600 per night on the weekdays, at one point you're down to $200 or less, you have probably hit this point where it's just not worth going down to $150 and $140 and $120. Even at the $300 mark, you might start to decide this isn't worth it, right? There's something else you can do. You're going to nest some listings. If you have a 5-bedroom property, you're gonna have one listing for your 5-bedroom property entire place. Then you're gonna make 5 separate listings for private bedrooms. Airbnb did just update their policy on private bedrooms. We're gonna do a separate video on that. On these private spaces, you're gonna have 5 private bedrooms that then nest under your one entire place. You're going to leave your entire place available all the time. You should open that calendar years into the future. They should be able to book as far into the future as they wanna book. These other 5 individual room listings, you're gonna have the calendars blocked by default. The exact opposite, they're never available. What you do then is you let your calendar for the entire place book at $600 a night or more, whatever your regular rate is. And you're gonna start to drop your rates 45 days out, like I said. And then maybe 30 days, 25 days into the future, you're gonna start hitting this number that you really don't wanna go below. And you have the back data to know that your listing doesn't get booked on weekdays sometimes unless you go below a certain threshold. And maybe that's a threshold you don't wanna go below. Maybe it's $250 a night, $200 a night, something like that. So what you do is these 5 different bedrooms you could have listed between $40 and $70, maybe $80 a night. Again, do your market research to find out what private rooms go for. But you're gonna have all these listed at their regular rate, $70, $80 a night, for example. But you're only gonna open these listings up on dates that are left over. Like the weekends that have already been booked, those are gonna be blocked. You're just gonna have some weekdays left, maybe sometimes some weekends left, and you're only gonna open the calendar up 3 weeks into the future. So the leftover dates that are available up to 3 weeks in advance, those can get booked. So now you have 5 listings available at $80 a night, but then you still have the whole place available at $300. So sometimes the whole place might get booked at $300, but other days you're gonna have 3 private rooms booked at $80 each, making you $240. Sometimes you have all 5 booked at $80 each, making you, again, $400 a night. This allows you a different path to try to generate some revenue on your listing, because going below 300 might really just rub you the wrong way, or going below 200 might really rub you the wrong way. But now you can capture partial revenues or even more revenues at the end of the day than your individual listing is capable of getting by doing this split strategy. It is a different type of cleaning turnover. It is a different type of guest. You're going to have to worry a little bit about guest dynamics because they are going to be sharing spaces like the living room and the kitchen. So this is going to be a small adaptation with your business model. You're going to have to be cool with it, but this opens you up to a completely new base of customer where last minute that 5-bedroom property just doesn't have enough action to get the premium price. But last minute travelers, solos and couples, people who book private rooms, they're going to be there. They're going to be available, and those are the people that book last minute. So you can save your listing from getting $0 of revenue by getting a few of those private rooms booked with those leftover dates. I highly encourage you to try it. And of course, I highly encourage you to ask any questions you have, because that's probably gonna lead you to some questions. You can either ask those here in the comments because I'll be there, or you can go to my free Facebook group, The Hosts of Airbnb Automated. I'll be there too to answer your questions, and so will about 50,000 other hosts, and they're awesome people. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I'm gonna move on. And as always, I will see you on the other side.